The party is walking up to a meeting at the Emerald Estate when they see Jason Puissance, a member of the most powerful family in the Empire. He offers to walk them in. As he's walking them in, the entire party sees black, and they are woken up into a scene in where they are in a musty cellar, and this man, who is also part of the same family, wheels in a metal cart full of various different torture kits, and he smiles and says, "This'll be fun." The barbarian rolls a strength check and gets a 24, snaps the chains and lands onto the ground, only to find himself once again strapped onto the wall, powerless. This is an actual scene from one of my tables, and it is a scene I am really not proud of. And in this table talk, what we're going to be talking about really is a Deus Ex Machina in player agency. And hopefully you can learn from my failures, and my failures can be a lesson to you or a laugh for you. So let's get into this table talk. There are two scenes I would like to highlight for the purposes of this lesson. The first scene is with one of the players trying to have their characters get assisted suicide by two other players. So basically, this character had felt as if she has been violated, as this mind meld creature is symbiotically living inside of her, and her body is not 100% hers anymore. And because of this, she would like to end her life in order to get rid of this creature. And then secondarily, hopefully later on in life, or later on in the story, is able to be revived later on and to continue her service to her master. And with a lot of convincing, a lot of finagling, a lot of backwork with the mind meld creature, it managed to convince the other characters to not allow her to go through with this and to actually keep her alive, as she is crazy, and no one in their right mind wants to do this, and it is more of an asset than it is a liability towards them. The second scene in the story that I would like to highlight for you guys is the one that I shared in the intro. The party was walking towards the Emerald Estate, which is this very beautiful building that is crafted by the Etherson family, the richest mining family in the entire empire. And as they were walking there, most of the party members had their eyes turned black, and they had disappeared in a flash and were pseudo-teleported into a chamber where they were then have this torture scene where they are all strapped onto the walls. And as the Puissance man was strolling in with his torture kit, the barbarian was like, "Oh, well, can I break out of the chains? Can I snap them with my ridiculous amounts of strength?" And I said, "Sure." So he raged, and I told him that he had to do it at disadvantage because he was currently exhausted from the ordeal. He rolled a crit and a 24. And from there, he was able to snap the chains. And when he landed on the ground, he looked up and he was back to being chained. And basically, he had gone in a time loop where him touching the ground reversed time to before he snapped the chains. And he basically was still stuck there, and he couldn't do nothing. And he was at the mercy of this torturer and what they had wanted to do. There are 5 lessons that I have learned from this story, and I'd like you guys to also learn from this story. The first lesson is the perception of player agency is much more important than if they actually have it. So the first thing, in the first scene that I described to you guys where Usithra had wanted assisted suicide, she had all the agency in the world, but her perception, or his perception, because it's the guy that runs the character, his perception of that agency was null and void. He had felt as if I, as a DM, was actively working against him to make sure he didn't kill his character for the purposes of storyline being more fluid, or even just the fact that he didn't have a character, and I personally was uncomfortable with that. And even though he technically was not wrong, the truth really was that I was acting as the mind meld creature inside of his character, working aggressively to ensure that it doesn't die because it wants to live. Now, here's how I could have fixed that. Before I even started to be the mind meld creature, I should have said to that player, "Hey, look, I understand that you would like to do this, but so you possibly are going to have to run this entire game, this entire 5-hour session without a character, and you're just going to spectate. Are you okay with that?" And check in with them. If they said, "Oh yeah, I'm perfectly cool with that. I'm perfectly fine with that." Okay, cool. But what that does is it gives him the perception of, hey, the DM is checking in with me and he knows I'm okay with it, which means that he's okay with it. So now as he's talking as this mind meld creature, I'm simply talking as the mind meld creature that wants to live. And that perception is there. So the lesson that you really should learn from that is perception, perception, perception. Perception is always key. And if your players ever feel like they're not in control, which you can always tell this when they're trying to do the quote unquote breaking the system, where they'll constantly spam one spell for no particularly good reason as they wait to see if they can find cracks in the system. And the way you can make them feel like they're in control is have them do something and then either feign confusion or actually show your confusion. Don't be a stonewall DM. And when you do that, they'll be like, "Oh, well, DM wasn't expecting that. Okay, that means that we are in control. We are doing things that the DM has not prepped for." Whether or not that is the truth or that is a lie does not matter. The perception is all that matters. The second lesson that I had learned was don't fall prey to the "I need to" mentality. So inside of this session, the second scene, the reason why it happened was because these creatures had wanted to get them into a torture scene way earlier in the session. And me as a DM, I was like, oh, I really need to have them go into this torture scene. And because of that, I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to give them a Deus Ex Machina, which basically without any rhyme or reason and without really any agency on the player's behalf, being able to thwart it or sense it or feel it or be able to counteract it, I just ripped them out of whatever they were doing because it was the end of the session and threw them in this encounter without their choice whatsoever, and basically said, all right, you're going to deal with this torture scene now. And the thing you need to remember as a DM is this is a two-way street. You are helping your players pursue the fantasy that they've never been able to do in any other game or in any other medium of just fantasy. And on top of that, they are helping you pursue it by engaging with the story that you're creating. And because it's a two-way street, nothing needs to happen. Things can happen, and if they don't happen, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just simply roll with the punches and just move on as if it never did happen. Or simply just let the consequences of them not engaging with that happen. Whether or not that's good for them or bad for them, that's your choice. But nothing, and I mean nothing, needs to happen. And stay out of that mentality because it's a two-way street. And once you get rid of one of the ways of the street, it's no longer a collaborative storytelling experience. And it's more or less one person is writing the book. The third lesson that I had learned is always give your players an option of potentially succeeding. So what do I mean by this? In the second scene where I had them whisked away into a torture dungeon, what I should have done is made the players make X save and then explicitly told them what the DC is. And what that will do is it will make the players feel like, okay, instead of Big Bad DM stealing our agency, he is saying that something is happening to me, and now I know something's happening to me, and however high the save DC is shows how powerful this thing is that's making it happen to me. So if I made the save DC a 21, instead of them saying Big Bad DM is stealing my agency, they say, whoa, why is it 21? What is so powerful to possibly make me do a 21 save DC? And the wheels are turning in a different direction, so then it's less about them, you stealing their agency, and more about them saying, what is this unknown force? The fourth lesson that I had learned is never portray your style of play. So I think most of you guys can figure out by my videos, I like to play a style of game where it's more laid back, it's more improv. I have a few scenarios played out, most fits in my head, and most of the meat and potatoes that actually happens in the game. So that's my particular style. The reason why I made so many mistakes and I stole my player's agency on accident was that I tried to play the over prepping DM where I had made like 8 pages for this particular session, and I was like, oh, they need to reach every single page that I prepped, and I was stressing myself out. And because of that, and because I felt just uncomfortable playing this radically different style of play, I made much more mistakes than I normally would have. So a lesson I'll say to you guys is don't portray your style of play. If you do like to play as the over prep DM, stay in that. And if you would like to try my style of laid back, slowly get yourself there, and vice versa. That way you don't throw yourself into a new element and basically are drowning in stress because you're not exactly sure how things are supposed to be going because you're not used to this and you accidentally make mistakes like I did. The fifth lesson that I had learned is to be open to critique. Now, player agency is all about perception. And because it's all about perception, I will never know if my players have lost their agency if I'm not aware of their perceptions. And because of that, you have to let your players know, hey, you can talk to me, you can tell me when you did not enjoy a session and why you did not enjoy it. And from you getting that dialogue with your players, you can improve as a DM. And that is so, so, so important. That's the reason why people in general, even myself, watch other YouTubers who talk about how DMing works and whatnot, because you're actively searching to get better. And what better way to get better than to ask your players how you can get better? I'm not at your tables. I don't know what happens. I don't know how to fix things for you. I don't know what works good and what doesn't work good. Your players know because they are in this collaborative storytelling experience with you. So get their perceptions, get their input, be open to critique. Don't automatically get defensive when they start saying things. Just simply sit down, take notes, and listen. And when they're done talking, when they feel like they've ranted off their feelings, you then converse, not defend, converse. There's a large difference. Defense is when you simply say, oh, I did it for this. And you don't say, all right, so this is why I did it. Is that okay? And now knowing that, is that better? Or how could I convey that this is why I was doing it? That is a conversation, not a defensive tactic. So be open to critique and you will catch these small little tidbits of mess ups. All in all, I just want to explain that player agency is so important because the reason why players play the game of Dungeons and Dragons and all of its weirdness is because we have absolute choice over what we do, and it actually matters. We can actually talk to an NPC for 3 hours and not get the same 3-point dialogue chain and get to engage in a legitimate conversation. We can go kill the Baron because we want to, and why not? We can go get ourselves in head over heels into really big messes that we created because we want to. Player agency is literally the bedrock that this entire game is founded upon, and why D&D and other tabletop role-playing games are so utterly unique. And you need to make sure as the DM that your players are enjoying their agency, because you're there to craft a story that no one has ever seen before, or a story that you have seen before in a different light. And your players are there to feel like they have control over everything. So make sure you don't steal that from them, and make sure that they feel always secure in the fact that they can do whatever they want. I really hoped you liked this video. If you really liked it, please feel free to hit the like button. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment on whether or not you think that player agency truly is the bedrock of all of D&D. And if you would love to join an amazing group of storytellers, just like myself and anyone in the comments below, where we just engage and talk with each other and just tell about our stories, and weekly on Fridays, we have calls where we just hang out and talk. Feel free to hit that up in the description below. The Discord is phenomenal. I love it. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, just because I post sometimes interesting stuff there, go ahead and follow me on my Twitter, which will be here. I really hope that this lesson and this table talk helped you out today. And I hope you have a fantastic day. And in a world without fantasy, sometimes you need a little Dungeons and Dragons.